the main thing I wanted to talk about during this podcast are two documentaries that Marcus, one of them I told Marcus to watch, and then the other one Marcus told me to watch. So mine was the Pixar story, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, Marcus, I wanted you to go ahead and kick it off, man. What did you want to talk about when it comes to like Behind the Mask? Because that was the one you wanted me to watch.
I'm ready.
Okay, so basically, the Behind the Mask documentary is a documentary on Disney Plus, and it's about comic books and how the origin of these characters came about in Marvel Comics, the backstory of the people who wrote them, why they got interested in writing these characters, why these character stories were the way they were at the beginning, and how they transformed over the years. And it's really like a personal catalog of these writers and artists and how these characters changed their lives, how they helped change other people's lives, how they affected communities such as African American, LGBTQ. I think I
There
got it
you
right
go.
this time.
There you go. You
There
got
you
it.
go.
Okay. It's really a great documentary because it's not really focusing on like a whole like race thing or equality thing. It's just really talking about people who love comic books and who grew up wanting to tell these stories. So for us, we all in some way, sort of kind of way, we love comic books and we love the whole superhero idea. So with Marvel, they really were, even though all of it wasn't like great depictions of how different races did things, they
Yeah.
really were the first to try at least to have different characters of different color, even though it was still stereotypical. They were trying. They were willing to risk it at a time when it wasn't popular because you got to think about it. Marvel came out during the 60s. So it was still a lot of in the South, it was Jim Crow, segregation, and all that. So it came out at a like very, you got to thread the line of what you do when you put these books out. So they came out with a black superhero who had his own country and own technology and stuff. And that was in 1966. So you thinking about the times when they were doing this, it's really like you had to have balls to like really try to do that, especially being a company that was predominantly white when it first started. And what I
Right.
liked about the documentary is it shows you how through the decades they started to let African Americans in, women writers in, Asian writers, Latino, different people from different races. Because, like they said, one of the ladies in the documentary said one of the big problems with it was that even though they had black characters, it was white guys in their 20s trying to write these characters. So
Exactly.
that's why they came off the way they did. So you got guys like Christopher Priest, Dennis Cohen, Larry Hama, like those kind of guys that kind of changed the narrative for their race. Let's stop painting the Asian characters yellow. Let's
Yeah.
stop making the African Americans the bug-eyed, big lip, comedic, magical Negro, all of that stuff. Let's cut all that out. Let's change the narrative. And I think that's the biggest thing of comic books is that the narrative is it's changed so much over the years, and the fact that we still can talk about it today and how it's still not 100% there. It just shows you how important a documentary like this is. But I told Chad to watch it because I was like, dude, when you watch this, you'll understand a lot about these characters and what's behind them. Because I always feel like for comic books, the best era was like the beginning of it for Marvel, like the beginning of it, and then towards right before they went bankrupt. And then I feel like once they came back, it lost its magic. And then they lose it and they get it back every now and they get caught
Yeah.
up in the whole like media, social media, what's going on. Let's try to please ABC. But I really appreciated that documentary. It was like fresh to hear from the actual people. So
Yeah.
I know I just said a mouthful, but when it comes to stuff like this, because like I said, I went to school for film. So eventually film is gonna always run into comic books somehow when you study the history of it. Because you have to go, especially when you talk about race. Like we did genre, and the history of genre, and we studied like African Americans in film, and they talked about those stereotypical characters, the Sambo and the Mammy character, and they were all portrayed as like idiots or savages and stuff. And it
Yeah.
was the same way in comic books. Up until Marvel, it was very poor representation of any race. You had the Native Americans who were painted as the savages and red face and speaking like they were speaking in broken English. So it's kind of like a ugly like history of it. You got to know the ugly part to get to the good part. And they actually touch on it in the documentary. Like they're
They
not
do.
afraid to speak upon that because that's a part of the history of comic books. So that's what I
Oh, yeah.
appreciated about it. Like one of the main things, and then I'll let you give your point on it, Chad, and then all experience with it. But one of the things I did was when they got to the part where they were talking about Luke Cage and Black Panther, they were talking about how Luke Cage was basically made because of black exploitation films, and that was just a whole experiment. And you could tell it wasn't really a black character because of the way he spoke and this kind of slang. Even like Christopher Priest even says he doesn't speak like a black person would speak. He's speaking
Right.
like what a white man thinks black people would speak in a kind of slang. And that's why a character like that at first didn't kind of like connect with people, but once they rehauled him later on down, and when I say later on down, like with our generation, he became a more relevant character because he became a father. He was fighting for the community. And then just to top it off, what makes Luke Cage cool with me is he's a black man that can't get hit by bullets. So he's bulletproof. So that just automatically it puts him up there. But getting back on subject, they talked about that and then they moved into, like I was saying, with the stereotypes. And then they got on Black Panther, and his whole one of his most famous comic book runs was the Jungle comics, the Jungle Action comics. That's when he had the whole thing with Killmonger, where he fought the Klan. But what's funny is in the documentary they talk about how at first Marvel were reprinting the Jungle Action comics with the blonde haired guy in the jungle saving the natives, which were of course African, from danger, and they was like defenseless and they couldn't do it themselves. So this guy named Don McGregor came in and was like, "Why are y'all reprinting this? Like, if you're gonna have a story about a hero in Africa, use Black Panther because he is a hero who's in Africa. He has his own nation." So he took the idea of taking T'Challa and putting him in those situations. And one of his storylines he did, which is really dope, and it just shows you like, how what's the word I'm trying to use? How I'm just gonna keep saying how ballsy they were to go with these
Yeah.
stories. He chose to put T'Challa against the Klan, fighting against the
Oh,
Klan. And what happened is he's dating a girl at the time, and she's got a table and she's talking about a story. Her aunt is telling a story about an uncle she had who was alive during the Reconstructive period and how the Klan came and they were harassing them and attacking them. But while she's telling the story, the girl who T'Challa is involved with at the time, she's imagining it as if T'Challa was around at that time. And of course, when you imagine if superheroes are around, it's going to be a different situation. But the thing is, he wasn't there. And what happens is her uncle ends up being hung. And he actually shows it in the comic book. You see a man being hung from a tree, and it's like, bruh, how crazy is that they did something like that back then, and you've never heard about it until that documentary came out. And I'm like, those are the kind of stories that you appreciate because it gives you the reality with the like fiction part of it. Yeah, we know this is a fictional world, but it still has that reality in it. And I think that's what Marvel did well when they tackled those kind of situations. So that was something I appreciated that they did. They were willing to take a little dip in. But I'm trying to get my words together, but I
no,
can't
you good.
You
all
got it,
over.
man. Like you
No,
good.
you no,
Hey,
you
it's
got
all
it for
good,
real.
man. You got every word.
Yeah. And he also talked about like how that was the first time it was an all black cast in comic books. And of course, how people didn't want it to continue to be that way. And he even talked about how they were going to send the Avengers in to start helping T'Challa. And he was like, no, we don't need the white guys to come help the black man. Like, he can't do it. T'Challa's the king of Wakanda. Like, he doesn't need help. And I feel like that connected me because I feel like that's what was missed in the film. You see what I'm saying? Like
Okay.
it went back to that whole idea of you got to have the white guy to save the day at the end. They can't do it without the white guy. But yeah, so with me saying all that, Chad,
Oh,
I
snap.
know
Chad
that's a
about to
lot
slam
that I
dunk.
got to throw back to you, but yeah. So what was
Yeah,
your thoughts on that?
no, yeah, that, and that's funny you said it just before I really weigh into it. I do like the connection that you made with the way like Christopher Priest and all of those early Dawn, all of those early Black Panther guys were talking about the comic and just how it didn't need to be any inclusion from anybody that wasn't Wakandan or anybody that wasn't African at the time, because like I said, a lot of those same values were true in the movie. Is that's the biggest thing T'Chaka was saying. He was just like, hey, you know what I'm saying? This is our shit. You know what I'm saying? We don't need anybody else to come fix this. And I feel like for the sake, of course, the universe, yeah, even T'Challa, we kind of had to figure it out in the end where, and I kind of like it. I think it was that whole sentiment might have been like just a tip of the hat to just like what the creators did for Wakanda and all of that kind of stuff, like having the hesitancy to really bring anybody else into that world. But they saw that the only way for them to move forward and within the realm of the movie was to start to try to include other people in there in what they made. Yeah, I like that connection. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought the same thing when I saw it. But yeah, I think it was really interesting, man. Like there were so many things that I didn't even know, like as far as race was concerned, like even the technicalities, because they were talking about some of the, even before Black Panther, some of the earlier depictions of Black characters, the artists were having hard times trying to figure out the colors to
they
mix.
were like great looking.
Yeah. So a lot of those, and I would love to actually have some of those comics, the earlier comics with African Americans. They look great, like you're saying, because they didn't know what shades of purple and yellow to put together to get an accurate skin tone for African American or African character. And yeah, man, I think it's crazy because you get to see like it's a full timeline because got Don McGregor, which pretty much put down the groundwork or laid the bricks for some of what we have today. Because now we have comics that are just like World of Wakanda, and it barely includes T'Challa. You know what I'm saying? So you can only imagine where we will be today if Don didn't have that forethought to say, hey, this guy doesn't need to be with other people, and we need to get rid of this blonde hair, blue-eyed Tarzan character and put T'Challa in here and make this Wakanda so we can breathe life into the world that T'Challa's from. And then from that, we have Christopher Priest, which pretty much gave Black Panther and T'Challa all his cool points. Christopher Priest, I love him so much because he gave Black Panther his swagger, like literally. Like some of my favorite depictions of Black Panther were during Christopher Priest's time of writing for him, because he's just so cool. He's like Batman, like my man T'Challa literally has like leather jackets, you know what I'm saying? And
Is that the one where he has the iconic like cape kind of thing going on? Yes, I love that. That's we need that. We need that.
Like, and then think about what he did for like African American women, because we wouldn't have the Dora Milaje.
Dora Milaje, I was just gonna say, he's recently had a Dora Milaje, bro. Like, yes, bro. It was crazy too. I'm gonna add to your, since you talking about him. I know what you're
about to say. Go ahead.
The reason why he's so dope, because he said in the documentary, he's like, yeah, I never go and say that I'm a Black writer. I'm a writer, and I just know how to write good stories. And that's why I love him, because he doesn't look at it from like a race perspective. It's, hey, if you can write the character good, then do it. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, yellow, purple, whatever. So like, bro, I definitely Man, because like I say, bro, y'all know I love Black Panther. That's like my favorite Marvel character. So
Yep.
Yeah.
when I read those stories and stuff, bro, from him,
Man,
he gets all my respect.
he
No,
gets
this
my.
is, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I said he gets all my respect for like that comment of just saying he's a writer. That's just the way to like to do it. To be like, hey, I can just write these stories. It doesn't matter about all that other stuff. I just can write whatever. I'm a good writer.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
he's really important in like comic book history as far as like for us because he was 17 when he started working at Marvel. And
Dang.
he's like the first black editor writer in that modern era of comics. So it's like, bruh, at a time when they still was, because Dennis Cohen even said it in the documentary. He was like, yeah, I went to DC, showed them my whole portfolio and everything. And they was like, oh yeah, we already got a color writer. So the fact that they were still talking in that language at that time, and he goes to Marvel and they're like, oh yeah, we could use you as an artist, not a colored artist. You know what I'm saying?
Just an artist.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing that gets you far in any kind of industry when you don't see color and race. You just see the talent. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
Agreed.
That's what's more important. And that's how I learned how to work with people when I was in college, because in college I was in class and working on projects and in art classes with people from 100 different backgrounds. So it's so fascinating to see everybody's different perspective on stuff. And you see them as the artist, as a writer, as a director, as a cameraman, as a penciler, as an inker, all those little jobs, but you don't put the title of black, white, Asian, gay, whatever you want to say. You don't put that in front of it, because in the dictionary, if you look up the word writer, it's not gonna have a color in front of it. It's gonna say writer, blah 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 blah. So
Exactly.
I know I got on such.
No. I'll say it like this, Marcus. With that saying, what you said there, I have that agreed with 100%. And I respect like what you just said. That was like the most like dopest thing. Like that, like just that way of looking at it is exactly the way I look at it too. So like we're in agreement, like 100%.
Christopher Priest and them are still around because they don't put those kind of titles on themselves. Like, yeah,
exactly.
I'm the first black man to do this. Like,
exactly.
Nah, I love comic books and I want to write them, and that's why I got into it. And that's why that documentary. That's why I was like pushing it so hard on you, Chad, because I was like, bro, you gotta watch this, because these dudes are really telling their story. It's not about that documentary probably was, I say, a 50-50, like 50% about comic book characters and then 50% about the people. Probably a little bit more about the people than the comic book.
Yeah, I'm definitely have to check it out because I've only heard you guys' stories about it. So like I'm gonna have to check it out.
You'll love it, Dmitri.
Yeah, especially with the way y'all hyping up and talking about it, I'm gonna have to check that out like immediately because
one guy they asked him, it was one of the black guys on there. So one of the guys was saying he had a conversation with Wayne McDuffie, and he was like, "Yeah, so who's your favorite like black character?" And he said The Thing. And I was when I first watched it, I was like, The Thing. He was like, "Yeah, because when the Thing walks into a room, he's judged on his appearance before anybody knows him or talks to him." And I was like, wow. When you look at it that way, yeah, he's a white man before he becomes a thing, but what he has to endure when he takes on that persona. Same thing with the Hulk. People see the Hulk, they see a monster, they're automatically scared. And I think one of them, I think he even said like a quote from James Baldwin. It was like, to be black and conscious in America is to be in a constant state of rage. And he used that after he was talking about the Hulk. So I was like, bruh, this documentary is getting to the bee's knees, bro, when they're getting real.
That was awesome. Like, I really loved it. Like I said, it brought up a lot of good points for me, man. And just a little bit of trivia for all of our viewers and listeners out there. Like, the original design for the Dora Milaje were based off of Tyra Banks and Naomi Campbell. That was something I didn't realize. So, but it's super duper cool, man. Just another thing that really stuck out to me was just like how really forward thinking, man, a lot of these artists were. And there were a lot of great black artists, and there were a lot of great white writers and and artists and things like that, they were completely in the time period that they were in. It's just crazy how forward thinking a lot of these guys were. Because I hopefully, prayerfully, you know what I'm saying, I'd love to talk to this guy in the future, but I think the story behind Tony Isabella is crazy, and how he turned a completely racist character, Black Bomber, into Black Lightning. So you know what I'm saying? Like that's just amazing to me, man. And for all of our viewers and listeners, Black Bomber was this character. Apparently, he was a white guy. He was akin to Hulk, but he was like this racist white guy. Yeah, when he got angry, he turned into this incredibly black exploitative character, and they turned that character or Tony Isabella, which is a fantastic comic book writer. When it was his turn to take over that character, he was like, "No, this is bullshit," and he pretty much made up a brand new character, and he's the creator of Black Lightning, and that's where that comes from. So it was really amazing. And another thing that really stuck out to me was I didn't know how important the X-Men were to the LGBT community. Like I had no clue. Like I didn't know. Yeah, because the one of the writers were talking about like how like the mutants from the X-Men, it was like a representation for a underrepresented or a underdeserved community, just pretty much trying to fit in and trying to, but they can't, the X-Men, because they either look a certain way, like Marcus was saying about the Thing. It's just like Nightcrawler and Beast and all of these guys, you know what I'm saying? They look a specific way, so they're not going to be able to fit into this mold that the community has set forth for them. But instead of hiding it, what did they do? They wear vibrant clothing, all of this kind of stuff that looks akin to what you would see. They made the connection to drag and all of that kind of stuff, that, you know, and I was just like, wow, I had no idea. I didn't even think to make that connection.
Yeah, I wouldn't have made that connection at all.
Neither. When I saw that, I was like, wow, I didn't know it was a connection. Because for me, the X-Men were always so like relevant and important to me, because I was like, man, I almost feel like I'm an X-Men because I'm black. And when I go out, they look at me like, oh, look at his hair, look how he dresses, look at the way they talk. Like that's how, like I know I go back to my film references a lot, but they always use like the other, and the other is always like the outcast, the ones that people look down on or they don't belong there. And that's how the X-Men are. They say they're mutants, and even the ones that look human, because they have a ability or they're different, it's, you can't come over here, you can't eat with us, we don't want you to go to school with our kids. And it's very parallel to segregation and stuff. And the fact that it came out around that time in the 60s, a lot of people say the ideology of Professor X and the Magneto, Dr. King and Malcolm X. And that's that kind of Magneto is like, yeah, I don't want to kill humans and stuff, but who says we have to interact with them and live amongst them when we're the superior beings? We can have our own place, or we can rule how we want to rule. And then you got Professor X, who's like, they're not all bad. It's some that are good, and we should try to work with them. And then you have those times where where they're like, you know what? I think we should just get away from them. The fact that you can connect stuff like that from comic books into your everyday life and what you go through, it's a testament to how important it is to people like us here at the Scrub Roundtable. Right. That really caught me off guard when I heard that too, about the LGBTQ community. I had no idea that they had that connection.
No, I didn't see it at all.
No, it's when you look at it, like I said, you look at some of the original designs for Storm. If you look at that, you'll be able to see it. You can literally see it. This is because when the guy was talking,
like Grace Jones.
Yes, bro. Bit. So right. So it's that overly, all of those original X-Men costumes, they all have that overly flamboyant, really vibrant colors. And it's just like, wow. Okay.
Colossus.
So it's just wild. Like I had no idea. And that's why I have such a love for comic books and comic book characters, because it's just like anything else. And it's really art in general, because it's like I know with anything, you can have one picture and 5 different people looking at it, and every one of those people are going to take away something different. And that's another thing that one of the last points I'll make about the documentary. And like I said, I don't have a problem with admitting to me being wrong or anything like that. You know, like, because when I was watching the documentary, okay, I'll give some background, because in prior episodes, we've discussed that I'm not the hugest fan of the Marvels, meaning Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, so on and so on and so on. Because I was thinking, I didn't have a hatred towards the movie, but I was thinking that the character of Carol Danvers, for how they put her in the MCU, that it was just like the writers and the directors really trying to pull on heartstrings of people that are in a, like, what do you call it? What's the movement called, Demetrius? I'm blanking because it's late.
Me too.
Yeah, like
women movement, or
just like a selfless pull on heartstrings to try to get people on the board for women empowerment and all that kind of stuff, because that was a heavy
theme
in the movie. Exactly. But when I looked at the documentary and I saw like how women superheroes were treated prior to Carol Danvers and how she was the first of her kind, I was just like, wow, because they were talking about these certain characters, like you have like your Susan Storms and things like that, like the way they were treated. These comic book writers and these artists didn't want the women characters to get their hands dirty. So they always gave them powers that they can look attractive and point at something, and then it would, they would have some kind of, they would have some kind of mind power. So their whole thing was like, okay, we need this character to continue to look attractive, and we need for this character not to be out here punching and kicking and getting her hands dirty. Carol Danvers was the exact opposite of that. And she was like one of the heroes that didn't care about looking a certain way and didn't care about getting down and dirty. And she was very, pro women everything at a time where nobody was talking about that, and that was not a popular conversation. I apologize for that, because I was just like, wow, I didn't really see it from that perspective. And I'm not saying that I'll go on record with saying in particular, because I'm not a Superman or whatever. So Carol Danvers is still not in Miss Marvel. There aren't still like my favorite superheroes. It's not really my cup of tea. But through the documentary, I definitely have way more respect for these characters, and I get why they exist. It's really cool.
Like when you think about it too, like saying Sue Storm, like what is her power? She literally turns invisible. And that's almost like saying, when a female character is getting annoying, just make them invisible so they're not there, and you gotta hear them and see them. Like that, like when I think about that, I was like, man, that was terrible power to get them. So that, like you said, when I seen that, it definitely did make me respect the character more. But I think, just like you said, I think the film is what kind of put a bad taste in our mouth.
After we had to talk about it off the podcast, and I will give her respect for what she was, but I just think her handlement, and like I said in the movie, and how they didn't respect the characters that came before her, is the reason why I didn't like it. Or reason why I wasn't feeling like that. I don't have a problem with Carol Danvers herself. It's just everything else in that movie was just how they handled those things in the movie just didn't like work for me. And I'm not going to get into those points because I'm trying to prevent a rant right now. So we're going to move on.
Look at his face, man. He's like he holding it in.
We're going to sidestep off that, because that could be a whole nother hour podcast in itself. Okay.
Yes.
Move on, Grays, on past it.
But maybe that documentary.
Maybe one of these days I'll let y'all hear that, but not today.
Right. But like I was saying, like that documentary seems like it's dope. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Definitely gonna check it out.
Yeah, you got to.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Go ahead, Marcus.
No, I was just gonna say, and Josh, like for you being like a creator and an artist, you'll definitely appreciate it. Because that's why I appreciate it so much, because that's what you've always, as an artist and like of anything, you always was like, man, I just want to tell these stories my way and just how I think about it. I don't care what character you give me. And that's what I've always respected about Marvel is, even though sometimes they have some flunders, they always focused on who the people were who put on the mask or who got the superpowers or who are the superheroes. It's not about Spider-Man. Like they said in the documentary, it's not about Spider-Man, it's about Peter Parker. And that's because you can relate to Peter Parker. Peter Parker's in high school. He's a nerd. And at the same time, he's a superhero. But when he goes to school, Flash Thompson is telling everybody how much he loves Spider-Man, but he's going over there and throwing Peter in a locker. And Peter has to suck that up and deal with it because that's a part of being a superhero. And you can relate to things like that. You know what I'm saying? That's what makes those characters almost like human and real. And then just like DMC was saying, like the fact that Marvel took it upon themselves to say, we're not going to go and create this like fictional city and make it like either like too like pretty and pristine or too grudgy. We're going to put them right there in New York. Spider-Man lives in Queens. The Hulk may live down in Manhattan. Luke Cage is in Harlem. These people are in real places. So when you read those books, it's, oh, I know where that is because that's where I stay. You have more of a connection to the characters. And I think that's why Marvel has been around so long and why it's done so well, because they try their best to connect to the people that read the comic books. And like I said, sometimes it could be a hit or miss, but that's what happens when you have something that's been around for so long. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I appreciate as an artist and as a, creator. That's what we want to do. We want to connect to the people who's reading our stuff, whether it's 2 people, 100, a million, as long as we connecting to somebody. You know what I'm saying?
No, and I feel that completely. And just like you said, because like a big point of it, a big thing that I like about Marvel was like like everybody says like nowadays, that person, like when they do something, it's oh yeah, they understood the assignment. Like Marvel completely understood the assignment because I love the duality that when these guys, like you got to shout out Stan Lee, man. Like when him, Steve Ditko, all these guys, and Jack Kirby, all these guys were just laying down a foundation, you know what I'm saying, of how they were going to attack trying to make a superhero. They looked at the way DC was doing what they were doing. And it's completely true. Like they did the exact opposite. Because if you think about what DC does, when you have a superhero that's with DC, like I'll use the Justice League as an example. Like all of these people, the superheroes are really who they are, and their secret identity is the trick.
That's the costume.
It's the costume. So Arthur Curry just pretends to be a regular guy. He's really the king of Atlantis. Wonder Woman, she just pretends to be whatever Diana. She is, and pretends to be Diana. She's really this Amazonian princess. You know what I'm saying? Superman pretends to be a lowly, reporter, but he's really an alien. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, and even Batman, you know what I'm saying? Batman,
he's really to be Bruce Wayne.
He pretends to be Bruce, and he's really this hurt, brooding guy when he puts on the bat and he puts on that costume and he goes around at night and he's avenging his parents, and he's still that little kid who had his parents die in front of him. That's who he really is. And Marvel did the exact opposite of that, like going piggybacking off what Marcus said, it made you care about the character, you know, which for my money today, that's just, like I said, that's why it's so, popular. That's why it's like evergreen, and why these stories adapted over and over again, and it still feels brand new. Listen.
That's true.
Ooh, thank you. These came out of nowhere.
But yeah, man, that's why, what I'm saying, these characters can keep getting adapted, and every time it feels brand new, because instead of me seeing something that's completely over the top, and that's, I think, what DC's problem is, they have to keep trying to make everything more huge and otherworldly, because the real people are these heroes. But then Marvel, all they got to do is just be like, hey, how would a real person that this situation is happening to react to this in real life?
Exactly.
And that's why Marvel's so great. And like I said, I love the documentary. It was awesome.
I give it a 5 out of 5, and I really do that. But it's a good documentary.
All right, Marcus put his stamp of approval on it. I have to see it now.
It's awesome, and it also gave me more respect for original Hudlin's Black Panther.
Yes. His Black Panther is actually one of my favorite like incarnations of Black Panther. Just like that whole story and style. Like that's what they made the show that they had on BET like some years ago.
Yeah, based
It
off
was
of
based
his.
on his comic book. And that's actually a really good that animated show is like really good. But people just don't know about it because it came on BET and nobody watches BET. But you can go on YouTube and watch all of it.
Oh, so it's definitely dope. And I think I actually have a comic from his run of Black Panther.
Yeah, me too. I got it too.
Yeah, man. So
I'm gonna have to cop some stuff because recently I found a comic book store not near my house, but same in my city and stuff like that. And they have these, I don't know how to explain it, but they're like these like ones that like move, like the front page like moves. It's like it's a moving
graphic ones.
Yeah, it's like a graphic, not graphic novel, but like it's like a comic book, but the cover it had that like holographic like moving kind of thing on the front of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've never seen something like that, so I was like, I'm gonna have to go pick up some of those because like it was like a Aquaman one and like I think a Batman one. It was really cool. Definitely gonna be spending some money buying some comics. Hopefully, I have some Black Panther stuff there, some old stuff. But and I'm gonna have to get that old school Black Panther with the cape pop. I saw it online. I have to cop it.
I got mine in the other room, but I got one. So
I'm
a proud owner of the Black Panther with the cape. Yes,
I'm
I had to get it. And I actually have the Jungle Action like comics. I have the one. I think I have one of them where he's fighting the clan, and then I got the one with him and Killmonger, where Killmonger throws him. The famous like where he throw him off. So yeah, I can say that I own those. My goal is to try to find all of them though, because I would love to read that run in like its entirety. Like
for sure, definitely.
Like I was telling Josh, I would really like to own the Black Panther. It's not a Black Panther comic, but the Fantastic Four comic where Black Panther was first introduced.
Bro,
I'd love to.
That would be dope.
Yeah, that would be dope. Cause like that story is so dope. He invited them
and whoop they
ass, bro. Bro, look, I went on Disney Plus, and because I love Keith David so much, I went like that Fantastic Four show from the 90s, the animated one. I don't like it, but I went to the Black Panther episode just to watch that and to hear Keith David trolling while he was like whooping their ass, and I was like, bro, it don't get no better than that. It don't get no better than that, bro.
Right. Oh man, that's it right there, bro. So yeah, definitely for all of our viewers and listeners out there, man, if you get the chance, please check out that documentary, man. What's it called again? Under the Mask?
Y'all think it's Under the Mask?
Behind the Mask?
Behind the Mask. It's on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Not a plug for Disney, by the way.
Right, we're not getting paid. We should be getting paid.
Yeah. We always talking about Marvel.
Right? They should slide us a check real quick. I'll take one for DC too. I'm not discriminating.
No discrimination.
No discrimination here. It works the same way, either way it comes.
Chad, I gotta ask you something, man.
What's up?
So, since you enlightened me with a beautiful documentary that took me back to my childhood, and it talked about a company that started that's really like a ground up thing. Now that's really a started from the bottom. Like they worked their ass off. So I'm gonna ask you and everybody so this gonna be our little smooth transition into the next subject. What was the first Pixar movie that you actually remember going to the theater to go see with your parents and you experienced that whole like moment? I know you gotta think back a while, but hey.
It was
Joshua would know better than me. What was it, Josh?
It was Inside Out. That's the last one we went to see as a family, I believe.
Oh, I saw that with you guys?
No, the first one y'all ever seen.
Yeah, I thought he said the first one.
That's the first one I saw like in a movie theater. That's the first one I saw.
Okay, so yeah, what's the first that you remember seeing?
The first one. Easy like the first Toy Story.
Yeah, Toy Story 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think I said that because I'm telling my age. Because I am a testament of time. Because I can actually say that I've seen the first 10 years of Pixar, I've seen every movie they released in the theaters. So I saw the very first Toy Story when it released and it was in the theaters, and you go it was I still can remember to this day because I was going into it thinking I was going to see like a 2D movie. And to see something like that and it still holds up today, it really stood the test of time. So I'm gonna turn the floor over to you, my guy, because you put me on to this and you just give us the 101 on old Pixar.
Oh yeah. Just like a little side note, and me thinking back to it, them early Disney movies, man, like that you are showing your age. Because when Toy Story came out, I don't even think I could walk, bro. I couldn't even walk.
You know
Yeah,
what?
because I was thinking, because I was like, I don't even think I remember seeing that in theaters. Because like,
Yeah, because Toy
yeah,
Story 1, I literally couldn't walk it, bro. I was like a whole baby.
right.
I saw Lion King too when it came out. So yeah, I'm
Once
old
again,
as
that was
hell.
93. I was born in that.
When Toy Story came out, I was 4. Okay, so
Damn. Oh my
Dang, bro,
yeah.
you are old man. Get him a cane.
goodness gracious. Yeah, man. But yeah, Marcus's age aside. But yeah, man. I watched this. No, I watched this awesome documentary, man. That was like I think it was called Story of Pixar. I want to say that was the title of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were just talking about the transition from 2D animated cartoons to what Pixar did, breaking down the doors, making three-dimensional full-length features. Well, first starting off with three-dimensional shorts and having to get funding by these things and not being sure that this was going to work, and just like working with literally guys like groundbreaking stuff, like making films with new technology as it was being created. And it's just wild, like so many hands were in on this. I didn't even know that what's his name, the iPhone guy, what's his name again?
Steve Jobs.
Steve
Yeah,
Jobs.
right, Steve Jobs, right. Like he was a big portion. He basically owned Pixar. Like he funded
We should thank
everything.
Steve Jobs and George
Yes.
Lucas from Pixar.
Seriously, and
Right.
George Lucas, exactly. But and the thing that was just like really cool to me was just like when they were putting together, after they pretty much got the funding together and all of that kind of stuff, and they got used to using the technology to where they can make like 3D animated cartoons, just pretty much getting the idea to make a cartoon or a animated film that is for kids but also palatable for adults. Like that was such a groundbreaking thing, because everything before that, what Disney was doing, Disney just pretty much said fuck it, and we're just going to remake Grim Tales and make them for kids.
Yeah,
You know
we're
what
gonna make them happy.
Right.
Right.
So some of
So
them fairy tales are not happy stories.
Oh
Right.
yeah, Little Mermaid.
Right, exactly. So at that point, Disney was just like, hey, we got the game plan. It's called Grimm's Tales, bro. And we just going to make it for kids. And we got that check. And Pixar could have so easily, and they even said that they were coming at a crossroads, because they were like, okay, Disney's making fairy tales. We do not want to make a fairy tale. And they took literally everything that they did to make their shorts, and they made it into a full film because their short 10 toy went over so well. They decided to make a film that was told from the perspective of toys. But to make a film like that, and to make it not just solely for children, and to give it life and to just give it feeling, because I always talk about like Toy Story 1 was great, man, but Toy Story 2, oh my God.
Yeah,
Like,
Toy Story
that-
2 was
That's
that.
the breadwinner right there, man.
Yeah.
that's a whole breadwinner. I'm just like that we're not even going to talk about the story, but just like the animation and the sequencing. Like my favorite all-time sequence from a Toy Story movie is when the guy came in and was like fixing up Woody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is my all-time favorite sequence.
That's
in
dope.
Toy Story.
That's one of them, like, it's satisfying to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but man, you talk about, because we're talking about it now, like all these years later, and people are flipping out because a DC movie made a character study on the Joker. But we're not even talking about that all of these years prior. And what was it, 2003, I think, when they came out with Toy Story 2? Mm-hmm. And these dudes did a character study on Woody. Like, that was so crazy to me. And the thing that I love about that movie in particular is because it tackles a lot of adult issues, but they do it in a way to where adults recognize what it is and children are just having a good time. So because the biggest thing with like Toy Story 1 and 2, and I love it because one of them, once again, is that duality. You had it from both perspectives. Toy Story is a movie about existentialism. What is my place in the world? And I love that because in the first movie, you had Woody, who was perfectly fine with where he was in his life. He was like, I'm Andy's favorite toy. It's okay. It's all good. Then this guy comes in, Buzz Lightyear, and he's, oh shit, everything has changed. What am I? But at the same time, Buzz Lightyear is going through the same thing because he's not who he thought he was. And he's just, oh, wait a second. You mean to tell me I'm not this space explorer? And his biggest thing was he couldn't fly. And he's, oh shit, I'm a toy. I'm not real. Dude, that's crazy. That a toy coming to the realization that he's not real. That is amazing.
A toy coming to realize the toy got batteries and the batteries and stuff.
Exactly. And he went through depression in that movie until at the end, you know what I'm saying? And I think it was so cool the way they brought that back around. Buzz Lightyear was finally able to get his opportunity to fly. And he saved Woody's life, and they were able to do whatever they had to do. And then in the second movie, it was Woody's turn to get the existentialism bug because he was just like, oh, and it was the exact opposite. He was happy where he was, but he forgot. He was happy where he was in his life, but he forgot who he actually was, had no idea what his background was. And then you introduce all of that kind of stuff. And he's like, shit, I want to be here. You know what I'm saying? This is great. And then you find out that once again, some of the pieces to the puzzle that you were given is a lie because this prospector, the guy that you thought was so great, is really trash. But he didn't give you that part of the story. I'm going off on a tangent here, but my thing is I love Pixar so much, and they do it over and over again with all of their movies. And it's something that I preach about because I love in media and whatever. I just love when people don't use the excuse that it's a cartoon or whatever to talk down to their audience. And I always talk a lot of trash about Teen Titans Go and the spark humor and all of that kind of stuff. But just using the excuse that it's a cartoon, you can still have a story and it can still be strong and it can still be geared towards children. You don't have to have something that, in Pixar for me, gets all the brownie points because they never do that. Like Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo is a story. It's not about Nemo. It's about his dad on the journey to become a better father to his son. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? That is heavy shit to talk about in the kids movie.
Yeah.
So that's why I love Pixar. But yeah, you guys go ahead and know what's going on, Marcus.
Like I was gonna say, like one of my recent favorite Pixar movies is one that Josh mentioned, and that's Inside Out. Really is dealing with mental health, like what goes on inside your head and how your emotions determine how your day can go or how your life is going. And then the fact that they chose to tell it from a teenager's perspective was really cool because when you're a teenager, you really are going through a lot of changes. And you're trying to figure out this thing called life. Okay, why am I changing? Why do I feel like this? Then you have to move to a new place and meet new people. Like your head is everywhere. And the fact that they took the character that was supposed to be the happiest character and she had to actually deal with stuff and figure out everything's not rainbows and sunshine, and that they took sadness and they paired, that they paired those two together, and then to find out sadness is actually the one who can run this thing because she doesn't have to be excluded. And like that movie right there, I ain't gonna lie, it almost made me cry because I was like, bro, like when she went through the whole thing and like her emotions just shut down and the memories were fading, I was like, damn, how did they sit in the writer's room and come up with this? Like, I'm a 20-some-year-old man when this movie is out, and I'm like, dang, I'm sitting back like,
Yeah,
that's heavy.
Mhm.
it's heavy. It's
That's
heavy.
heavy because that is definitely a mental health movie. Like, for real, for real. So, just like you said, Chad, like when it comes to Pixar, like we said with Marvel, they get the assignment. They It's
Yes.
a reason why they have put out hit after hit. It's a reason. It's because of the people who are making these films, and like in the documentary, they pointed out they make it an environment where you have deadlines, you got to do this, and it's work, but it's an environment where you don't feel like you at work. It feels like you at a big playground with all your friends, and y'all are coming to just create and put together these masterpieces. Even things like Monsters Inc. Taking the
Mhm.
idea of monsters being in the closet, but the monsters, they got their own lives on the other side, and the fact that how they had that relationship with the child. When you can take stuff like that and give it emotions and, like you said, make it entertaining for both adults and kids, the formula, and you doing it. So I
Yeah.
Yeah.
just want to add to you my favorite sequence too. Another one in Toy Story 2 is Jessie's story, where she tells what happened to her with Emily, and they show that whole how she got
Yes.
left behind. And I was like, bro,
Yes.
like a toy is really
Yes.
sitting here telling how they got left behind, and it like,
Yes.
bro, that would take a grown man down to his knees, bro. So
Yes.
they really get it. In that documentary, it really shows how you can start from the bottom and you can really work your way up to the top and you keep working hard. And those guys are so important because they made it easier for the next generation where they could just come in and just pick this stuff up and just make these movies while they had to figure it out as they were going. They were literally building the computers and adding stuff to it to make the technology work. Excuse me. So it's like, bro, it's crazy to see how they got their stuff going, man. So I really did appreciate. I thank you for putting me on to that one,
Oh
I'm
Chad.
yeah,
about
no
to not
problem.
check that out. Check that movie out too. But like I'll say the last movie I saw in theater that was a Pixar movie was Coco. I went to go see that in theaters with my friends.
Oh,
And when I
Coco will make
tell
you
you,
cry too,
yeah, I tell you, Coco had me in my feelings. I was like, man, I'm a grown man. I
bro.
can't be crying in the theater like this.
Coco, I wanted to curse Coco out when I seen it because I had just lost my grandmother and
Yes,
she had dementia. So I was like, bro, why the freak would Disney put out a movie right now about a lady, a grandmother who's losing her memory, and the little boy is trying to remind her, and then she dies at the end. I said, y'all just want me to curl up in a little ball and
right.
cry, but
Exactly.
that shows you that even without them knowing what's going on in people's lives, they're giving a meaning to a story. Yes, it was fun. It was pretty to see, but when they told the story, and I think a lot of Pixar movies, like you said, Chad, about identity and knowing who you are, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what Coco is about. Is
Yeah.
knowing who you are and figuring that out, and why are you important, and what is
And
your family? What is your
yeah.
family? No, go ahead. I was done.
Oh, what I was gonna say is it was in like the movie. It was like he thought his family was this way, and he oh, this is my grandfather was, and he found out that whole entire thing was a lie. The whole entire family thing was a lie, and it was this other guy that was there. And and I thought about it like this: but when you're a kid, you don't really know like the ins and outs of your family or whatever like that. You have to like you learn that thing as you get older. Oh, that's why my family did this. That's why my family was like this. That's why these people aren't here anymore. That's why this, as the other. So it's like understanding your family is this way, and then realizing as you get older or through learning stuff that it's not as I guess black and white as you thought it was. And that when I
Mhm.
saw that, I was like, I kind of got mad because I was like, I understood it. I was like, yeah, I can understand learning your family's like past and all this dark stuff that they had going on and stuff like that. So I related to that. And then the
Yeah.
ending, I was mad about that ending. Just I was like,
Oh,
why?
it crushed me so bad. I was in the man. I was like this. I was like, man, why y'all doing this to me, bro?
And in fact, the
No,
whole movie, he was like, they were like, oh, you can't play music, and you're just like, okay, why? and then you found out like why he couldn't do his dream, and they were trying to make him
And it
go in
just
the
was
shoes,
like, damn.
which is like real crap, because like your parents won't sometimes parents like try to give you the best thing like you can do.
It's just funny to think about that kind of stuff, because I'm not really the guy to have a really that goes on complex deep dives or like really inquiries about these movies on that particular level. Because when I was watching movies like that, I wouldn't think about it like that. I was a teenager, so
yeah.
But yeah, like it honestly, having the outlook on things that I have now, like I definitely want to go back and visit those movies and really have a critical, have like a really critical. Let's view them in a critical eye, through a critical eye.
I'm telling you, man. I'll tell you one more that I actually learned yesterday that is going to blow your mind, and it blew mine too, because once again, it's like we're talking about Pixar taking stuff from an emotional adult level and putting it into children's cartoons. I'm looking at it also from a crazy scientific level and then putting it, like dropping these little nuggets in these like animated films. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was talking about dimensions and basically how Monsters Inc. is an allegory for the fourth dimension. And it's like really cool. So just stick with me. So the example he used is, let's say I'm recording this podcast on a table right now, and I filled up this full table and I have nowhere else to put my stuff on this flat plane. Now, we are three-dimensional beings and we operate in three dimensions, but think about an ant that can only really perceive if sitting on this table right now in two dimensions. So to an ant that can only perceive in two dimensions, he thinks my table is full. Let's say I could talk to Ann. I'm like, hey, I could fill up this table some more. And he's like, no, you can't. I'm looking everywhere on this space. There's nowhere else you can go. But I can stack and go higher. But to the ant that can only perceive in two dimensions, to him, it just disappears. He can't see that I've stacked all this paper up to the ceiling. So look at it from Monsters Inc. Behind the door where the children are, they can't see all the doors and the offices and all of that stuff from Monsters Inc. Like when they open the door, it's just their closet. But as three-dimensional beings, they can't perceive the fourth dimension, which is where the monsters live. So it just disappears. Just like the ant. When I stack papers, ants can only perceive in two dimensions. So to the ant, the papers just disappear. He's like, where's the paper? He can't see that I stacked it. Isn't that crazy? Like,
no, it's so crazy. Cool. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
even think about it like that. That's cool.
That's wild, man.
Yeah, it's almost I just thought now that you mentioned that, a lot of Disney movies use that fourth dimension mindset. Because like in Toy Story, like I guess the fourth dimension can be more so, I guess, talked about like psychologically, because the kids in Toys R Us don't know that the toys have their own thoughts and emotions, and then Inside Out, like the kid can't really see their emotions actually having these physical manifestations that conduct their own conversations and have their own complex feelings.
Exactly. Basically, like Pixar is just lit.
Pixar is like, Pixar is like, yo, you want this? Okay, I'm gonna make you a movie about that.
Another level of thinking, man. They are on
they out here just putting it down, man.
No, definitely.
They're going crazy.
That's crazy, bro. Now that I think about that, bro, like I'm thinking about all the movies I watched, and it just changed the perspective of everything. Bro.
Yeah, I agree. I gotta go.
Hey, Chad, thank you. I'm finna lay that fourth dimension line on some females, man. I'm finna sound real smart.
It's a pretty interesting, little thought experiment. Like it really is. I didn't even think about it like that. And like I said, for all of our viewers and listeners, I appreciate it, but that did not come from me. That was Dr. Amazing Neil deGrasse Tyson, the guy that I want to be like someday. That man is so that isn't me. That came from him. I just remembered it. So yeah. But no, guys, that's just another example of like why I love Pixar so much, man. And just like I said, as a 28-year-old man, why it still resonates with me. And they did it on purpose like that, so it would resonate once again to a little kid that's just having a good time and enjoying the content, and to an adult which really understands the meaning behind these allegories that these animators are creating. So it's really cool, man. It's really great stuff. So definitely for all of our viewers and listeners out there, man, definitely please. It's on Netflix. Check out the Pixar story. It's awesome.
On last note, I love movies that are like you can rewatch and get like a different meaning every single time you watch it. And like I love those movies that are just not, as you say, one dimensional. They have multiple different levels to them. And now that I know that the Monster Inc. thing, I want to like go watch it again.
You gonna go watch it again?
Yeah,
right?
like I want to go watch it again. I want to go see this stuff because I'm like, man, I'm big, like that fourth dimension stuff. I love that kind of like those kind of talk, that kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, and also I want to know what happened to Boo. I'm still waiting for that sequel. Pixar.
You're gonna be waiting for that sequel for years,
for a long
man.
time.
Look, they came out with Monsters University. They got the new series on Disney Plus where they supposed to be like, show what happened. I'm like, bro, what happened to Boo? Because they opened the door back and she still knew who they were. So I want to know what happened. That's all. You can make it like a short. I don't care. I just want to know what happened.
What's happening is they're working on it right now. They're just trying to get the magic and trying to drop that knowledge.
Right, they're trying to salt bait it, just spread that magic on there.